All right, so we're live. Welcome back to the Space Between Ideas. I'm Blank Gates. We're just carrying on from the last video where we're talking about sprint, and let's just take a look at what it said. Let's jump into the audio and listen to this.
Okay, I have reviewed the 8-sprint plan you've outlined for the project, core MVP development. Analysis and evaluation, as architect, PM. This is a very well thought out and logical sequence for tackling the MVP. Let's look at it through the lens of our brainstorm framework. Imitate, integrate. It follows standard agile practices by starting with foundations, sprint 1, and building incrementally. It logically groups related functionalities, e.g., objective module then scoreboard generation in sprint 3, scoreboard interaction then touch base in sprint 4. It integrates the core workflow loop, objective to scoreboard to touch base, by sprint 4. Ignore. It correctly ignores non-MVP features and avoids trying to build everything at once. Interfere. It prioritizes getting the core unique value proposition, the objective to scoreboard to touch base loop, functional relatively early, by sprint 4, which is great for validating the core concept. Ideate. The structure is solid. While minor variations are possible, e.g., combining sprints 5 and 6, this 8-sprint breakdown provides clear focus for each stage. Recommendation. Your proposed 8-sprint plan is excellent and provides a clear, logical roadmap for building the MVP. As your architect and project manager guide, I fully recommend we adopt this 8-sprint structure. One key refinement, clarification. The only refinement I'd strongly suggest incorporating is regarding testing. While Sprint 7 is rightly focused on UI polish and end-to-end, E2E, testing, it's crucial that testing isn't deferred until then. Suggestion. We must explicitly include unit testing and integration testing tasks within the scoreboards for sprints 2 through 6, directly corresponding to the features being developed in those sprints. Example. When Sprint 2 includes Implement Project CRUD, its scoreboard should also include tasks like Write unit tests for project validation logic and Write integration tests for project API endpoints. Rationale. This practice of continuous testing catches bugs early, improves code quality, and makes the final E2E testing and polishing phase in Sprint 7 much smoother and more effective. Final recommended plan. Let's proceed with your 8-sprint structure, with the understanding that testing tasks, unit integration, are an integral part of the work defined within each sprint from Sprint 2 onwards. Sprint 7 will then focus on broader E2E testing and overall refinement. Summary of adopted MVP sprint goals. Sprint 1, Foundations and Authentication. Sprint 2, Project Management and Vision Module, plus testing. Sprint 3, Objective Module and Scoreboard Generation, plus testing. Sprint 4, Scoreboard Interaction and Touchbase Module, plus testing. Sprint 5, Brainstorm and Choose Modules, plus testing. Sprint 6, History and Module Navigation, plus testing. Sprint 7, UI polish and end-to-end testing. Sprint 8, Deployment prep and launch readiness. This detailed roadmap gives us excellent clarity on the path ahead for the MVP. Now that we have this high-level sprint plan established and refined, we can confidently return to executing step 1 of Sprint 1. As a reminder, the action was for you to use your AI coding tool to run the Create Next App command with the specified options and a unique project name for each tool environment. Please let me know the outcome when you have done that.
All right, so it's talking about we started talking about like how to get this project started, but the important point right now is that we need to create our so we got sprint 1. Now, why is there sprint 1? So I think we need to do one more sprint calibration. So we need to do the markdown for sprint number 8, which means before we start creating the app, I want to get another markdown file that we can use to calibrate the AI coding tool, whether it be here in Gemini or if it's in ChatGPT or Claude or anywhere else. What we need to do is we need to have a outline of the sprint, the overall 8 sprints, and also the steps within each of the sprints. And once we have a clear structure of all of the sprints and the things within basically, I'm talking about the cycle inside of the sprint. Like, for example, what is the first step we need to take when we start a sprint? For example, are we going to rely on the project manager and the architect to design an overall process for the sprint? And then are we going to ask the scrum master to outline the scrums? And then are we going to ask the developers to work on each of the features? And then are we going to ask the testers to test each of the features? So let's create a list of items that are required, meaning let's create the objectives within each of the sprints. And the way that we're going to create those objectives is to first use the brainstorming module for each of the sprints individually, and consider using the brainstorming module from the perspective of each of the people on the team, and then from the brainstorming module and considering each of the sprints and the information that we've derived from using the brainstorming tool from the perspective of each of the members of the team, we're going to make a full list of objectives based on the objectives module. And the final output is going to be an exhaustive list of the sprint and the sprint cycle based on all of the objectives that we need to work on within each of the sprints. I'm not even sure I know what I was just saying. So this is the reason why we use AI tools, is because they can help us with this. All right, so I'm just going to put the copyright back in here. Now the thing is that the modules. Why do I write this? Because the modules Buckholz are from the book Create Crucial Insight. Well, at least the brainstorming module is Create Crucial Insight. And Tom asked me to put a copyright in so that, I don't know. Okay, I understand. All right, let's do some reading.
Okay, I understand the goal. You want a new, comprehensive Markdown file that outlines the entire 8-sprint MVP roadmap, details the specific cycle of activities within each sprint based on roles, and lists the objectives for each sprint derived from simulated multi-role brainstorming. This document is intended to serve as a calibration tool for AI, coding helpers, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, or others. This is a very detailed upfront planning exercise. While planning future sprints in exhaustive detail now is less common in pure Agile, where plans adapt based on previous sprint outcomes, I understand your desire for a clear, comprehensive roadmap, especially for guiding AI assistance. Regarding the intra-sprint cycle, you described a cycle involving distinct role-based steps. 1. PM, architect design the process, feature for the sprint. 2. Scrum Master outlines the specific tasks, scrums. 3. Developers work on features. 4. Testers test features. We can certainly document this as the intended workflow within each sprint. Regarding generating objectives for all sprints, simulating a multi-role brainstorm, PM, Arch, SM, Dev, Test, BA perspectives, using the brainstorm module and then deriving detailed objectives using the objective module for all 8 sprints right now would be a very complex simulation with highly speculative results for the later sprints. Proposed approach for the new Markdown file. To provide the comprehensive structure you want while maintaining some practicality, I propose creating the Markdown file. Link to MVP_full_roadmap_and_process.md. With the following structure. 1. Overall MVP goal. Briefly restate. 2. High-level sprint roadmap, 8 sprints, list the 8 sprints with their agreed-upon goals, as defined previously. 3. Standard intra-sprint cycle. Detail the role-based activity cycle you described. PM, Arch design to SM outline to dev work to test work, that we will aim to follow within each sprint. 4. Detailed sprint objectives and tasks. Sprint 1, Foundations and Auth, include the detailed objectives we already defined using the objective module, and the full scoreboard, task list, we created, including testing tasks. This represents the output of the conceptual multi-role brainstorm for Sprint 1, Sprints 2 to 8. For each of these future sprints, list the main high-level objectives we previously sequenced, e.g., Sprint 2 objective. Implement core navigation and page structure UI, Sprint 3 objective. Implement full CRUD and display for projects, etc. We will not perform the exhaustive multi-role brainstorm simulation and detailed objective module breakdown for Sprints 2 to 8 at this time. We will perform that detailed planning step at the start of each respective sprint. Rationale for this approach. It provides the complete 8-sprint roadmap you requested. It documents the specific intra-sprint workflow you outlined. It gives full detail for Sprint 1, which is immediately actionable. It provides clear objectives for future sprints, enough context for an AI to understand the overall plan, without generating excessive, potentially inaccurate upfront detail for work that is weeks or months away. This maintains a degree of agile flexibility, allowing us to refine the objectives and tasks for future sprints based on the outcomes of earlier ones. This level of detail should be more than sufficient context for calibrating AI coding tools, which primarily need the immediate tasks, tech stack, and overall project structure goal. Does this proposed structure for the new Markdown file meet your needs? It provides the exhaustive roadmap and process definition while focusing the deep objective, task detail on the immediately relevant Sprint 1.
So, didn't I already have one? We got the markdown for the sprint. Yeah, we got the sprint tool calibration. Sprint process definition. Copy. All right, so probably, I don't know, probably it just needs to, probably just needs to update that file. The problem with the current file is it doesn't outline the actual sprint. And I mean, I don't mind having to change this document. Okay, so I have the content to this. You're asking if the file is sufficient. Evaluation clearly explains the process. However, it lacks the high level 8. It doesn't explicitly detail the role-based inter-sprint workflow. Yes, recommend instead of creating an entirely new 8th document, let's update the file. Okay, so here's the content. There we go. It's exactly what I wanted. There we go. Good. Now, so now I'm asking the other AI tool what it thinks of this document. And this page, we're just going to copy and paste there. So it's the updated version. And we're going to go back and see what, okay, so I've reviewed. It looks like an excellent refinement, combined key information. It effectively merged, Okay, wait, here's my assessment. Combines key information, includes a roadmap, integrates the roles, maintains core principles, clearly useful. The updated structures accurately reflects our discussion, provide more comprehensive actual guide for our calibration. I will consider this definitive going forward. Uh-huh. Sprint one, foundations, which okay. There, okay, so now it wants to start with fund. All right, now the thing is, now when I was working with the first AI, when I was working with the first Gemini window, let's jump to the Gemini window. It was telling me, okay, it said, hey, you need to jump into the process of coding. Let's do this. Let's start. Let's go ahead. And I was like, all right, let's go. Let's jump right into our tool. And the thing is that I don't think that's the right way to go. Um, now, so we got our seventh markdown file. We have finished calibrating that for our sprint calibration. There, good. So now we're in sprint one. Now the question is, what are we going to do for sprint one? Um, all right, so I actually have this document. Here's the sprint into sprint one. We're going to copy this file. Now we're back to the first one. Is this still the outline for sprint one, or do we need to make changes? And then I'm just going to copy this again. Copy and then send. Then go into my guys that are working on this project simultaneously now. Now, before we look at those answers, let's take a look at something else. I want to introduce this new idea. Okay, so this is my understanding of a product launch roadmap. And it comes from the methodology called price profile sales funnel, which is something I developed on my own. I mean, it's not like I did it all by myself. Like this is the process from a lot of talking to a lot of people. Remember, at the base of all of these things is that I work as a coach. I use the methodology. I use Tom's book to teach people about like how to think about solving problems, and the app that I'm creating is based on my work as a coach. So then you have to expect at some point that although right now what you've been watching is me developing a piece of software, I'm not actually a software engineer. I'm using my coaching methodology techniques in order to think through problems and solve these these problems. So if I'm successful, if I'm able to actually create a piece of software, then the expectation is that my coaching methodologies are at least sufficient enough to help people who are making software using AI. And then my second argument is that the actual application that I'm developing is going to help uh, managers to manage people and projects. Obviously, if we're talking about business and people and projects, the overall thing that we're all trying to do is we're trying to launch products from MVP to IPO. So, this is a really, really basic idea behind what is a business. Number one, price. And my argument is it doesn't really matter if you haven't got the other, it doesn't really matter what your price is. If you haven't got the other two right. Right? So that means let's look at the next one. So let's just jump into profile. Profile, this is the value propositions packaging. All right. Now this is talking about UI, meaning the product itself, and your website. I don't know what a we site is, a website. All right. And probably also your outbound marketing and your inbound marketing. All right, so there has to be some kind of coherence between the user interface, so meaning like the actual product experience, your website, and the inbound marketing. There has to be some kind of design coherence between all of these things. All right, so then now from here, sometimes we talk about the hook. The hook, it's another book, and there's a methodology behind the hook, which has to be used within your product, within your website, and also within your inbound marketing. I'm not going to go into those details right now. At some point, maybe we'll talk about that kind of stuff. I just want to give a really basic overview right now of this methodology, this overall picture. All right, so we jump into the next one, which is the sales funnel. So this is the invitation to come look at the packaging, get to know us, hear what the people are saying, take a test drive, and then plug our solution into your challenge. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what's going on in life. We're going to be using this inbound marketing cycle. Inbound marketing is, let's take a look at inbound marketing. Inbound marketing, from my perspective, looks like this. All right, so you can see this lady. She's the company, and it's gonna throw the ball into the hoop, and then it's gonna come down, and then she's gonna throw the ball into the hoop, and she's gonna come down. What you're hoping is that your customers are gonna start picking up those balls and also throwing those balls into the hoop. So I would express that the ball into the hoop. This is successfully providing a recommendation, a testimonial, a witness. All right. So in religion, you know that it's very key to provide a witness. So in religions, people usually stand up and they give their testimony. They say, well, I joined this religion and then God came and talked to me and this is what God said to me. And now I'm feeling great. That's the basis behind religion. Religion, it's about what? It's about saying, I'm going to live after I die. And so, in order for me to live after I die, there has to be some kind of magic. There has to be some kind of formula. Like, how is it that I'm going to live after I die? And then they say, well, this is it. This is the formula. And then, in addition to giving me the magic formula for living after I die, it also provides me with some kind of benefit here and now. Those are the two things that you need in a religion. How is it that I'm going to be alive after I die? What kind of benefits am I getting right now? And then people stand up and they give those testimonies. All right, so now this is also what she's trying to do. She's trying to say, if you use our product, there's going to be some kind of long-term benefit and also some immediate benefit. Those are the two things that people want. They want an immediate benefit, they want a long-term benefit. And then what happens is, if you're successful, like if somebody starts using your product, if they buy your product, they start using the product, right? So my little app, it has to solve people's immediate needs, and then they need to be able to see that there's some kind of benefit over time. And then what happens if that customer is happy? He's going to start using word of mouth marketing to tell other people about that product. Right? So inbound marketing is not difficult. It's based on this little sales funnel. So when people give a testimony, whether it be through social media, or whether, it doesn't matter if it's the company or if it's your customers, people, they start to, what, awareness. Stage one is awareness. There you see her. What is that song from Little Mermaid? There you want her. Look at her, you know you do. She don't got a lot to say, but there's something about her. Wow, wow, wow. So you want to get people, they want to get to know you. They want to get to know your product. And then as they get to know your product, hopefully they start to like your product. The result is that somebody is eventually going to click. Then stage two is consideration, meaning I'm going to look at, like, what are my potential problems, what are my needs, and what's the solution that you're offering. So from like, hopefully when we start to use your product, then we're going to start to trust you. We're going to start to trust when they see your website, when they see your product, they need to be able to trust it. Like, why am I going to give you my data? Why am I going to share with you? See that, especially because of the nature of the product that I'm building, it's the same issue. I remember that Samsung thing when ChatGPT first came out. Samsung just immediately came out and said nobody in our company is allowed to use ChatGPT because they saw this as like a data mining tool. Anybody who uses AI is offering their personal, their most sacred and secret thoughts to some little computer program. And for what benefit? The benefit is that it's going to help you in some way. So as you can imagine, I've already shared what? I've already shared all of my innermost details of my little application with Google Gemini and with ChatGPT. They already know everything about my product, and I've even used the product within the AI coding to, within the chat within Gemini in order to produce the the results that I need to use within the coding tools in order to create the software. They already have intimate details of the product that I'm trying to create. Question is, do I trust them? Well, I mean, at this point, obviously, I have to trust them because otherwise, I don't get the benefit. So eventually the customers that come into my app, they also have to trust the website. They have to feel that they trust my what? My what? So now let's jump into this. So we're talking about creatives. So we have a system for creating ad creatives. We have a system for measuring performance, and we have a system for selecting campaigns. This idea of campaigns, this means a lot of it is just based on like what. So what I'm gonna I want to do either an ad campaign, so a paid ad campaign, or I'm gonna be doing like my social media presence, which means creating a free account. And which platform am I going to be using? Am I using Google AdWord for people who are searching on Google? Am I going to be doing something with AI? Am I going to be doing something on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn? Where's the campaign going to be located? And then we start to create the ad creatives. And I need people to trust the ads when they see the ads, when they see the content, to trust those what they're seeing in social media, because eventually I need them to try and try. So this is the connection between getting them to your website and then getting them to actually interact with your product. And then at some point after they start interacting with your product, they're going to buy your product, which turns them into a customer. All right. So now what am I talking about with that second guy who's throwing the basketball? I'm talking about delight. So what happens if people really love your product, they start using it and they say it's really, really fantastic. They become promoters, which means that now those promoters, people who are using your product, are going to start testifying. They're going to be sharing their experience with other people, strangers, people who have never heard of your product. And then those new people who have never heard of your product, they're going to come to get to know and like your product as well. In this case, if it's a customer who's sharing their experience, then it's much, much more likely that people will begin to trust your product. So, the number one thing that you need to do is you need to delight your customers, because if you have a delighted customers, then when they talk to strangers about your product, it's much more likely that those new prospects are going to trust your product because they heard about your product from a customer, not from you directly. Okay, so we need to build a system for creating creatives. We need a system for measuring performance. We need to make some decisions about where our campaign is going to go. Now, and then that's called inbound marketing. And the creatives that we create is going to have to direct traffic to the website. Now, of course, what I'm talking about there is called a lead magnet. All right. So when we talk about cross-functional discussions, the first thing we're talking about is a lead magnet, meaning how do we get people from the creatives to our website? And once they reach our website, how is it that we're going to use the concept of the hook? And how are we going to use design principles and psychology to get people to try? We need them to try something. Also, we need to give them we need them to give us their contact information. And then this goes back to price. Okay, so the price you have, it only tells me what kind of customers you serve. All right, so your value proposition is generally not a blue ocean opportunity. Usually it's a red ocean. There's other people that are competing in this market. So the question is like, what is step one when it comes to value proposition and offer? So I think people should have this kind of discussion. They need to discuss the user experience, discuss how the user experience gives the user value, why people are paying for this user experience, what other offers are on the market, and how does the user experience differ between competitors. So you have to create this. So remember the Porter's five forces? Three of those five forces talk about competitors. They say rivalry among existing competitors, threat of new entrants, and threat of substitutes. In all of these cases, what you have is somebody has a specific element of a value proposition, meaning, I mean, this is going back to the concept of needs and solutions. In the consideration stage, people, they have specific needs and they're going to be looking at the solutions and then they're going to compare. What does that mean? It means that you have to have a clear understanding of the elements of the value proposition, meaning what are the specific needs of your potential customers? And then how do established competitors provide solutions for those needs? How do innovative competitors provide solutions for those needs? And then what kind of substitutes are there to provide solutions for those needs? We're talking about specific needs and specific solutions for those needs. All right, now this goes into product design. Once you have your design product, then you're going to need to have a list of your competitors, competitors. Now, this also includes the concept of when you are creating your ads, when you're creating your social media, then you're going to need to be able to explain to people your value proposition. And I think that this is the foundation of explaining your value proposition. Okay. Now, before we go any further into this, I just wanted to provide this little roadmap so that people understand what I'm talking about. Because right now we're talking about developing a product experience. But we have to understand that the product experience, it's the product, yes. The product is elements of a value proposition. And as we start to build in the elements of the value proposition, at the same time, we need to be thinking about our ad creatives because there's going to be a direct connection between the elements of our value proposition and our ad creatives. Great. Now let's jump back into guys. All right, do we got audio going?
Yes, the markdown content you've just shared, linked to MVP_detailed_plan_sprint_1_start.md, is exactly the detailed plan we finalized in the previous steps.
All right, I can see you're not getting the audio. Let me just reshare this. Let's try that again.
It accurately reflects the overall MVP objectives and their sequence into potential sprint goals. The specific focus, objective number 1, establish foundational infrastructure and authentication for Sprint 1. The revised scoreboard, task list for Sprint 1, updated to incorporate our finalized technology stack, Next.js, Supabase Auth, Prisma, Vercel, and including specific testing considerations, tasks. The agreed upon outline for how we will execute Sprint 1 step by step. The initial example prompts for your AI coding tools. The necessary documentation reminders. So, yes, this is still the correct outline for Sprint 1, and no changes are needed to this plan before we begin. We are ready to proceed with step 1 from that plan, initialize the Next.js project. As previously stated, action, use your AI coding tools terminal command execution feature to run the following command, making sure to replace your project name with a unique name, like Management App Cursor or similar. Options, when prompted by Create Next App. Use ESLint? Yes. Use Tailwind CSS? No. Use SRC directory? Yes. Use App Router? Yes. Customize default import alias at *. No. Press Enter. Please go ahead and execute this first step using one of your AI coding tools. Let me know when it's complete or if you encounter any issues.
All right, so it's telling me to like work with the terminal, and I think that the coding tools are smart enough to do that stuff by themselves. So I'm not gonna. Oh, come on. I think what just happened? Okay. Maybe I'll just click and drag. There we go. Okay. Copy, copy. Now I'm just going to jump into the second screen. And does it say the same thing? Yes, let's review this one. It's excellent. Revise. Okay, outline, height, discrepancy. Let's proceed with sprint one. Oh, actually, there's something weird about Gemini. It's like it doesn't. Sometimes it copies some weird things, and I don't know why it does this. Okay, so it just messed this all up. And then if I click the screen, it like opens other screens. Yeah, sometimes it does some weird things. Edit the text. Okay. There we go. Did I just upload the Sprint 1 document? No, I don't think I uploaded the Sprint 1 document. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Now, all right. So the thing is that we have this is the Sprint 1 document. I'm confused now about if what the heck is going on. I don't think it has this. I don't think the second Gemini has the Sprint 1 document. So I'm gonna details. I'm gonna select all. I'm gonna copy this, and then I'm gonna jump into this is the second window. All right, so now we're calibrating the second window with Sprint 1. Exactly. Okay, so now I'm caught up. So this is all the work that I did Saturday night, and I didn't make the video. I didn't realize it's going to take me so long to get all of this set up. Okay, now we're actually going to get to the thing which I actually what I wanted to talk about, which is the product experience, the UI UX step 1. There you go. There you go. Uh-huh. You can provide these prompts sequentially in your AI coding tool. Remember to ensure the necessary environments are stable. What? Environment variables. Okay, good. So this is the second window, and the second window did a fantastic job in creating the 3 prompts for our AI coding tools to get that project initialized. Let's check with our first window, the one that we've been using since the beginning of the project. Okay, I understand you want me to single comprehensive prompt for each. Okay, yes. Well, the AI coding tool cannot perform actions required external. Okay. All right, there you go. So here's prompt 1 for cursor. Here's for windsurf. And here it is for replete. Now I'm curious. Do those prompts consider each of these steps or not? Step 1, paste. All right. Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this from there. Step 2. What's step 2 is this. Yeah, what I'm doing is I'm copying all this stuff from the second window and I'm putting it into the first. Because the first window, it gave me a bunch of steps. What is going on? Step 3. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Copy this code. There. All right, I'm going to jump back to the first window and then send. Why? Because this one, like, it just gave me individual commands for each cursor and replete and windsurf. I don't know if it's just step 1 or all 3 steps. You've broken down the initial setup into 3 logical steps, which is helpful for clarity. Let's compare the breakdown to a simple comprehensive prompt. Step 1, prompt 1. My comprehensive prompt included these exact actions as instructions 1 and 2. Yes, the step is covered. My comprehensive included installing Prism. Differences: your Prism schema differentiation slightly variation when I included in my prompt, specifically the user module. We should use your latest schema definition as it reflects your most current thinking. Didn't explicitly include the git commit. Conclusion: yes, the step is covered. Included installing Superbase. Your Superbase client helper code includes more robust handling for potential missing environment variables, which is better than the simple version I initially included. Conclusion: most of the steps are covered. Keep the command as a manual step for you to run after the AI finishes the setup after you. What? Most of the steps, but we should use your client helper code and keep the Prisma migrate dev command as a manual step for you to run after the AI finishes the setup after you create your Superbase project, configure your. My single comprehensive prompt covers almost all that. We should update that. Okay. Would you like? Let's work in a step by step way to get each of the 3 systems running. Give me 1 prompt at a time, and I'll reply with the feedback from each tool. Continue until all are up and running. All right, so now actually we have the main thinker here, and we have a second window that can help us. Plain text. Copy the prompt text above, give it to cursor, give it to windsurf, give it to replete. Okay, good. All right, so there we go. We got the first prompt for each of our tools. Now, after we set the stuff up, after we finish setting up, so we got our sprint 1 is set up, and then, okay, we're doing sprint 1 right now. It has the sprint document, and what are we actually doing? Establish foundational infrastructure. So we're actually doing the step before this. We're getting the software environments ready for this development process. Now, before we talk about that, before we start the project, I just want to talk about some different subject. And well, since I've been talking for 45 minutes, I'm going to end this stream and then we're going to jump into it in the next video.